Hey everyone, it's Naomi. Welcome. Today I want to talk to you about a really important conversation that I had with my daughter, who is 6 years old. So my daughter came home one day after school and she said to me, "Mommy, am I skinny or am I chubby?" And it really caught me off guard. It caught me off guard in some ways just because it felt like it was out of the blue, but it also just caught me off guard because I thought, wow, she's just 6. Like, isn't that a little young to be, thinking about what her body looks like? And then I realized that when I was 6 years old, I had the same thoughts. I felt the same way. I was curious in the same way. And it really kind of brought me back to this time in my life where, I didn't understand a lot about my body. And even though my parents were, incredibly supportive and, gave me a lot of resources and tools and a lot of love, and even, got me into therapy when I was, feeling like I was fat and ate, even though they did all of those amazing things, I really still struggled and ended up with an eating disorder that lasted from the time that I was, probably about 8 or 9 years old until I was in my mid to late 20s. And again, it wasn't my parents' fault. They didn't do anything wrong. My parents did everything that they could to provide me with the answers that I wanted and needed. But I still felt really insecure about my body, and I still wasn't really sure like what it meant to be skinny or what it meant to be fat or what it meant to be anything else for that matter. And I think part of that is because, particularly as girls and women, we are socialized to think about our bodies a lot more than boys and men are. Now, they certainly are. It's not to take away from the fact that, boys and men have, sometimes similar concerns about whether or not their bodies look and feel and, measure up to those of other boys and men. But it's just so much more insidious and so much more prevalent with girls and women. And it starts really young, I can't tell you still how many times people will stop my daughter, on the way to the playground, like we're on the way to go play, and somebody will stop her and be like, "My goodness, aren't you pretty?" Or "Aren't you adorable?" Or "Isn't that a pretty dress you're wearing?" And none of them say anything like that to my son. Obviously, he's not wearing a dress necessarily, but he's just as cute, like my daughter is 6, he's 3 almost. And sometimes they'll comment on how cute he is, but, it's really different, witnessing it, listening to it. It's just very, very different, so from a very young age, I think girls and women are socialized to, look at themselves critically and to think about appearance before they think about other characteristics, like bravery or, being smart or, even just playing, having a greater sense of play. So, and there's also, there's imagery that's bombarded, at them from the time that they're really young, until, forever, right? So, it starts with like those, Disney princesses who more often than not do not have even remotely normal bodies, to even, some of the younger versions like Shimmer and Shine and, Dora and, just the full range of, what these young girls see represented even in cartoon imagery is a little bit skewed, right? So of course they're going to grow up not really understanding what it is, right? And when I asked my daughter, I said, "Okay, well, why do you ask? Why are you asking me if you're skinny or chubby?" She said, "Well, my friend told me in school that she's really, really skinny. And I just wondered if I was like her." And again, I totally got that, right? Because when I was in school, I had a friend who was really, really skinny, and I was a little bit more muscular. I was a strong kid, and I danced, and I was a little bit more curvy. I wasn't like overweight necessarily by any stretch of the word, but I wasn't a real thin kid. That's just not my body type, and I wanted to be just like her. And so I totally understood my daughter sort of going, "Well, my friend said this and I want to be like her and, I don't know." And so I took a really deep breath And I said, okay, so are you skinny or are you chubby? I said, well, do you think you're skinny or do you think you're chubby? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, well, do you think it's a good thing to be skinny or a bad thing to be skinny? And she's like, I don't know. She said, I just know that my friend said she is. And I said, well, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing to be chubby? And she's like, I don't know. But she said, my friend said she was skinny and I want to be like her. And I said, okay. I was like, well, the truth is, kiddo, is that, skinny or chubby are a little bit less important than something else. She was like, well, what is that? And I said, it's a little bit more important to be healthy. I said, you can't always tell whether or not somebody's healthy based on whether they're skinny or chubby. That's just not, that's not really a benchmark. I don't think I used that word with her. She's 6. But I said, that's not always, that's not always how you can tell. So I said, do you know what it means to be healthy? And she said, well, I don't know. She said, I guess it means eating things that make you grow big and strong. And I said, well, yeah, that's a really good start. I said, it also means eating things that don't make you feel yucky, right? Like eating things that don't give you a tummy ache, or, eating things that like give you lots of energy and make you feel really good, or, eating until you feel full and not eating anymore. You're not eating things that taste gross to you, or, that you don't like eating. That's healthy. I said, does that make sense? And she said, yeah, that makes sense. And I said, but healthy isn't just about, your body. Healthy is also about a lot of other things. Healthy can be like remembering your address, or remembering, mommy and daddy's cell phone numbers. Healthy can be remembering how to get from one place to the next place. Healthy is, sometimes remembering shapes, right? Being able to do puzzles. That's a really healthy thing. I was like, are you good at puzzles? My daughter, by the way, is like a puzzle wizard. She is 6 years old and she has put together 500-piece puzzles. So, and she's like, yeah, I love puzzles. I'm awesome at puzzles. And I was like, yeah, so, you're healthy. And I said, but not everybody likes puzzles. Some people's brains work in different ways and they're still healthy, but it's more about using your brain. Right? So sometimes healthy isn't even just about your brain. Sometimes it's about how your body feels, right? So healthy can be, getting enough sleep, like going to bed at a good time and waking up at a good time so that you don't feel cranky and tired all day. Are there days that you feel cranky and tired? She's like, yeah, there are days that I feel cranky and tired. And I said, yeah. And I was like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're really unhealthy, but the more cranky and tired you are, the easier it is for your body to get sick, right? So the easier it is to get a virus, or to just get something that makes your body not feel so good. So I said, sometimes healthy is really just about getting enough sleep so that your body can heal and grow and repair. I was like, does that make sense? And she said, yeah, that totally makes sense. And we talked about some other things too. And, and at the end, I asked her even things, like I wanted to lighten it up a little bit because I think it can be kind of heavy. And so I said to her, I was like, okay. I said, so sometimes, not always, but sometimes healthy is about what you can do with your body. So I said, what do you like to do with your body? And, she's like, I like to run, I like to dance, I like to, do yoga. She's like, I like to do headstands. And she's like, I like to swim. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like using your body in those ways is really healthy. And I said, I was like, there's some other things too sometimes. I was like, how sometimes daddy's like doing, jumping jacks and push-ups and sit-ups? She's like, yeah. And I was like, now that's not necessarily something that makes everyone healthy, but I said, can you do push-ups? She's like, yeah, I can totally do push-ups. And she was like, how many do you want me to do? And I was like, 5. She goes, okay. So she does 5 push-ups. It's adorable. And then she's like, okay, what else? And I was like, okay, can you do jumping jacks? And she's like, yeah, I can. How many? And I was like, 5. She goes, okay. And she did 10, which is awesome. And she's like, what else? And I was like, okay. I was like, can you remember the lyrics to your favorite song? And she was like, yes. And she started singing it. And I was like, can we dance to your favorite song? And we started dancing in the kitchen. And that was it. And so I said at the end, I was like, does this make sense? I was like, does this, kind of answer that question for you? And she's like, yeah. I was like, and I said, do you feel healthy? And she's like, yeah, I feel healthy. And I said, so, I think what's more important, kiddo, is, that you feel good in your body. right? It's making good choices for yourself and listening to your body and taking care of your body. Skinny or chubby is not really the most important question, right? She was like, okay, you know, and then after that we kind of dropped it. But it was not an easy conversation. It was not one that I was necessarily looking forward to, but at the end of it, I really enjoyed it. You know, I really enjoyed having this really hard conversation with my 6-year-old about body image and about the perception of bodies to a lesser degree, you know, in the world, particularly for girls. And I do want to share, so I posted this as a blog, and I do want to share actually one thing that somebody wrote as a comment on my blog, which I also thought was really insightful because she had had a similar conversation with her daughter. So what she said was this, and I'm just going to read it directly from the comment. She said, "My daughter asked me, what does it mean to be fat last week? I paused, just like you, and said, why do you ask? She said, I heard someone say that they are fat. Am I fat? I told her, fat is a substance your body makes to store energy. When people live outside or in places where food is sometimes or always scarce, they eat extra food to be able to store fat and energy on their bodies for when they cannot eat or food isn't available. We don't need the extra energy because we have access to food almost all the time. I also said, perhaps your friend has heard someone else say that and they don't understand that fat is stored energy. I also said, every person stores energy in different amounts based on their lifestyle. She said, oh, do I have a healthy lifestyle? I said, yes, you do. My daughter then said, my body has the perfect amount of fat stored for me. I said, exactly. A different spin on it to acknowledge the necessity of fat, but just the right amount of it. And I really loved that response, so thank you, Julia, for that on my blog, because I also think that's a really important one. And if my daughter ever asks me about fat or asks me about chubbiness again, I'm going to go with that very scientific and really useful response so that she knows that actually fat is necessary, and it's necessary for our brain development, right? Like right now, I am almost 20 weeks pregnant. If I don't get enough fat and if I don't get enough protein, my baby's brain won't develop as well. You know, so getting enough fat into my body is actually really important right now. So just another spin on that, and I really loved that comment. And there's some other really phenomenal comments on my blog. So if you haven't checked it out, I'll post the link to the blog in the description below so that you can read them too. If you have any comments that you want to add to this about, you know, conversations that you might have had with your 6-year-old or 5-year-old or 10-year-old about what it means to be healthy or skinny or chubby or fat or whatever, I would love to hear them in the comments below. I think this is a super important conversation to have with all kids, not just girls, okay, but boys too. A really good conversation to have with all kids about what it means to be healthy, and really what it means to feel good in our bodies instead of basing our value in ourselves on the way that we look from the outside. So thank you for tuning in today. A big thank you to my daughter, who obviously doesn't watch YouTube like this because she's 6, but massive gratitude to my daughter for being my greatest teacher and for initiating this conversation as difficult as it was. As always, I really appreciate you tuning in and watching. And if you know anybody who needs to hear this, please share this message with them. And I look forward to talking with you again really soon. All right, until then, bye.